It's time to bring in our buddy Diante Lee for the game plan of the week. We like to break down one side of the ball in one of these matchups. Diante is an actual defensive coordinator in his day-to-day life, which gives him some real insight here. You were putting some clips online this week, man. You guys are just flying around, wrecking shit.
Yeah, man. I don't know if people can tell, but I've got my mid-season defensive coordinator beard working right now, too. That's what all that work kind of goes towards, or how it's reflected. Yeah, man, we're having a pretty decent year, and I'm definitely looking forward to what the rest of it's going to look like.
All right, so you are now Todd Bowles. You are no longer Diante
Right.
Lee in this exercise. I want you to start building me a game plan for how the Bucs defense is going to take care of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense on Sunday.
I think it all starts with tight coverage. That was the approach in the Super Bowl that they played against when they played against each other a couple of years ago. And that was what allowed pressure to get home. Obviously, the kind of sieve that I think the Kansas City offensive line was in 2020 is not what it is now. I would certainly say not. But I would think that that's kind of made up for in the fact that there's not a Tyreek Hill now that you have to worry about devoting 4 eyes to. So I think that you can still stick to some of the things that Todd Bowles really likes to do, which is playing tight coverage on passing downs. And then on those mixed down situations, it's all about trying to give the illusion of bringing pressure, right? Using Levante David, using Devin White as potential blitzers and dropping edges out into coverage, the way that we talk about simulated pressures and creepers. I think that that's going to be the generic framework that they're probably approaching Sunday with.
I know that the Chiefs' offensive line is better than it was in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, at one point did we get concerned about the way Orlando Brown is playing?
Well, that's the misconception with him. He got those all-pro teams and Pro Bowls in Baltimore, and then he goes to Kansas City. Everyone's like, "Oh, well, they got an elite left tackle." And it's like, no, they didn't. Like this is not the guy that he's fine. He's an above-average starter, I would say. But I think there's a big disconnect between what he actually is and what his actual ability is. So that's where it's kind of concerning in a game like this, where the other defense got some juice that can run around him. His method, and it works for him. And this is sometimes how big Bryant McKinney made a whole career doing this. Just let guys run around. Just let guys run around, see how it goes. Okay,
when you're 6'8", 360, that's an exercise.
A lot of surface area.
Don't even have to move. Don't even have to move your feet. Just go around me. Yep, that's good. And Mahomes makes it works because he goes up and out of the pocket and it works. But that is an issue when you're going against a defensive front that will run games that will get you into awkward angles where you do have to move your feet and have better eyes. So yeah, it's the interior of the Chiefs offensive line is good when Trey Smith is healthy. But the tackles are still, it's not this big upgrade from when Fisher was there. It's more about the same. Like that's kind of how you have to look at it. Even if they play so stylistically different, that left tackle is totally different. And we can't not even talk about without Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle. But that's, there's a little bit of difference than what I think the conception of what this offensive line looks like.
I think the stunts in the games is a really good point to make. I think that, in your mind's eye, thinking about that Super Bowl, I think it's easy to think that it was just straight 4-man rushes killing them. It was more late pressure, late developing pressure from Jason Pierre-Paul, from your Shaq Barretts, getting guys who were looping, to your point of Mahomes being a up and out escaper from the pocket. Getting a guy in his face as he's climbing creates a lot of distress. So that's definitely something I'm looking at as well.
Absolutely.
Coverage-wise, behind some of those simulated pressure looks, Diante, is there one or two things that you feel like you can lean on that makes the game harder for Mahomes? We talk about this all the time. There's some quarterbacks you can't blitz. Mahomes is one of those guys. So the simulated pressures that the Bucs are comfortable bringing align nicely with how you want to attack this team. But what are you playing behind that? And are you picking anything up from some of the stuff that the Colts did last week to slow this team down in ways that are probably a little bit surprising?
I would say, from a simulated pressure standpoint, one of the things that I think that people might think of simulated pressures in terms of we're trying to get a free runner at the quarterback. And I think that there's certainly a value in that. But if you're a 3-4 team, what you're really after, and this is something that we've talked about on the podcast together, something that Nate has talked about with you, Robert, is keeping the back end to protect. Right. So you have a true coverage advantage all the way across the board in terms of your zone defenders. And that's one of the things that I think Tampa Bay does really well, because you have to honor the athletic ability of their two backers in White and David. So that's something that I will be looking at when you're trying to play those zone looks. And for Tampa, their zone looks is not going to be quarters. It's usually single high. So you're talking like a soft cover 3, and you're talking about some of their rotational cover 2 stuff. And those are things that they do really effectively, because you have to honor the fact that it could be cover one. It could be a 5-man pressure. We don't know who the fourth rusher is going to be, because they give you these bare front and odd front style of looks, and they'll walk guys up to the line of scrimmage as well. So that to me is what I will be looking at from a perspective. And then the second half of your question, Robert, when you're talking about playing tight coverages, matching and routes, there are two things that I saw in the Packers game that I'm really interested to see happen when these two teams match up with one another. So the Packers went 1-by-3, as Nate has mentioned multiple times on this podcast, right? Meaning it's a trips formation, but the tight end is a wide receiver that's split out, right? When the Bucs saw that from the Packers, what they did was take Levante David out the box to play one-on-one with the tight end. And when you can do that, and this is something else that we talk about in coverage all the time.
No one can do that, by the way. This is like a one-of-one thing.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Exactly. So, and when you have that kind of versatility, when you talk about flooding the coverage to the trip side, sending multiple bodies and sets of eyes to the trip side, when you can do that, that kind of piqued my interest in, okay, well, if you try to put Kelsey at X and David can handle this guy, well, shoot, you can do a lot with Logan Ryan now, taking away crossers, those dagger concepts that we know that Mahomes likes, working in the middle of the field. Anything vertically, you can now match up or get double teams on those vertical routes and not worry about undressing that intermediate area of the field, because you've got a robber player. And that's something to me that really piqued my interest. And then the other side of it is just the fact that they play 2-man. They'll play more aggressive quarters. They'll play a little bit of bracket stuff. They will do whatever they need to in terms of getting multiple sets of eyes on guys that are working those intermediate areas. And then that's really when you got to deal with the defensive ends breathing on your neck, right? Bringing in the pocket. You start to feel that a whole lot more when it's pat the ball. Okay, my first look, they're playing tight coverage. We don't like this against man. I'm moving on. Holy crap, my number 2 has a double team on it. Well, now where am I going, right? Now it's like, okay, intermediate area, late in the down, and now you're losing vision. I can't see the backside safety now because I'm just trying to find my receiver and the leverage that he's being defended on. I've got to squeeze this in right now because I'm running out of platform to throw off of, and that's where you get that pick that Logan Ryan had last week against Aaron Rodgers. So I think we're going to see a good amount of the same thing.
Nate, we have an offense that struggled last week against the Colts and is now playing the best defense in football for the first 3 weeks of the year. How do you get back? How do you get back to feeling comfortable and really being the team that you want to be on that side of the ball?
Yeah, that last week from the Chiefs against the Colts, and I can't believe I'm comparing Andy Reid to Marilyn Monroe here, but I'm going to. And that's the quote that every girl likes to say, is that if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. Identical figures between Andy Reid and Marilyn Monroe.
Same person. It's split an image of each other. But why I'm saying that is Andy Reid resorted to his worst tendencies last week in the sense of how they ran the ball. And how they're using their personnel. They're spreading out, running RPOs, which is fine. I like that when they sprinkle it in, but this is the frustration. All the times they hit the wall last year is when they leaned into this. And Gus Bradley, of all people, and I swear that Andy Reid was seeing red, and he saw Gus Bradley on the other side. He's like, oh my God, we're throwing for 500 yards. And no, they didn't throw for 500 yards, and they didn't run the ball efficiently, and they had to make a couple big plays from Mahomes out of structure, which is fine. But that's a team that what coverage is coming more or less every time. Now you're playing against a team that likes to change the picture on you. Or if you're, like you said, Diante, running all that 2-man stuff. And looking back, I found my Super Bowl notes from a couple of years ago when they met in the Super Bowl. I can't believe I found it. Google Docs is great. And I thought, I was like, okay, wow, I don't think the Bucs will run a lot of 2-man. They've shown some 2-man this playoffs, but you don't want Levante David.
It took them to the Super Bowl.
And I didn't think that
they played it during the playoffs.
Levante David would be able to hold up against Travis Kelce, and he did. He kicked his ass in that game. So that I know that's 2 years or a couple of years ago. I get it, but it's still like they're both 2 years older. Like it's not like one got younger, one's a Benjamin Button, situation going on. So I think with that, that is a good matchup because they're going to make Mahomes be a hero, or they're going to make Andy Reid be patient. And Andy Reid has to. They are so much more efficient running from under center. It's not even a question. I think they are the fourth worst team from shotgun by success rate, and they're about league average when they run from under center, which is what we knew this summer and spring. That's what they should be leaning into. Counter is their best run play. We knew this. This is what they should be leaning into. Their second best play is the Y insert play we talked about, where the tight end folds inside. They ran it once last week against the Colts. It's just go back to what you think this plan was going to be. Don't get, go with your gut feeling, your big gut feeling, Andy Reid. But I also think that example that Diante is bringing up with the simulated, keeping the back in protection, CEH, as limited as he's been as a runner, has been devastating as a pass catcher so far this year. He's 4th in the NFL, all positions, running backs, receivers, and tight ends, in first downs per route. 4th in the entire league. That's almost triple the usual rate of other running backs. Well, if we can't get him out and he has to pass protect, that's a weapon that you're pulling away from them. Or if you do the 2-man hug rush where, there he is, there's White coming up, acting like I'm blitzing, but I'm not blitzing. And then the running back has to hang, or he triggers. You're just creating pressures where you're not really pressuring. So I don't know. The Bucs have a lot of answers to what the Chiefs want to do, how they want to attack. But I would say is that the Chiefs have to go back to the basics, really. I think they have to be a play action heavy team. I also want to see how every time I talk about the Bulls defense, I always say the advantage is to get into a base kind of offense, 12, 21, or 13 personnel, make them match with base defense because he likes to do that. Well, if you go 12, Kelsey gets treated as a receiver. So that gets taken away from you. So I think you're going to see a lot of 13 personnel where you see 3 tight ends to try and get them to match and then attack vertically from those looks, because then you could treat Kelsey as a normal receiver.
That's what they did against Arizona in week 1. And they did it to great effect in that first game of the season. So
that's
when
how
you have a team
their front defenses.
Yep. So
I know it's interesting. I know it's just honestly, Andy Reid, just stick with the basics, just do, and it'll be fine. I know you want to be creative and cute, but it's like, don't listen to the siren song.
Right.
This is going to be a great one. We'll be watching this on Sunday night. Diante, really appreciate the time, my friend. Always good to chat with you. You'll be back on Monday.
Yes, sir.
For the Monday hangover. For those of you guys who don't know,
it's good.
Every Monday in this exact space, Diante joins me. We talk about some of the games that we could not hit on the Sunday recap show. If you are not checking out that show either on YouTube or on the podcast feed, you really should, because you get a hell of a lot of Diante, and we're all better off for that. Thanks a lot, bud. You got a game tomorrow?
Do have a game tomorrow. Beautiful thing is that we're seeing the wing tee. That's why there's a little bit more length to my beard than there would be. Haven't had much time to think about anything else but stopping to run.